Nebraska dominated against UTEP for week one, and now all eyes are on the Colorado game this Saturday. So in today's video, I'm going to go over the risers and fallers for the Huskers throughout their first matchup. Who are the guys who played better than expectations, who played below expectations, and everything else in between. So really quick, we have a lot to talk about in today's video. Make sure to hit that like button if you are fired up about Saturday. I know I am. And hey, if you're new to the channel or just a returning viewer, make sure to subscribe. I post daily Nebraska football content, and you're not going to want to miss it this season. So if you're a diehard fan of this program, join the best family here on Nebraska YouTube and hit that subscribe button. It would help me out greatly. But without further ado, let's get into it, talking about some of Nebraska's risers and fallers throughout week one. So basically, this means the players who played better than we were expecting, some guys who played worse than what we were expecting, and everything else. And, before I get comments about it, I will not be mentioning the obvious picks like Dylan Raiola, Isaiah Neyor, Jamal Banks. Again, those are pretty easy. I'm going to talk about some of the other starters that really aren't being mentioned. So let's go to my first riser, a guy who played very, very well versus UTEP, and this is Ja'Cory Barney. Man, oh man, did he live up to the hype that we heard about all offseason, that he's so dynamic, he's so shifty, and we saw that on display. Now, he only had one catch for 100 yards. It was on a little bit of a jet sweep pass, but in that play, and you saw his speed, his ability to make a guy miss, and really what impressed me about Ja'Cory Barney was not him actually on offense, it was him on special teams. He had 3 kick returns for 75 yards. Again, he has the ability to take any single ball to the crib. So for the first time in a long time, Nebraska has a real kick returner who has a dynamic ability to bring a touchdown on special teams to the Big Red. So he only had 18 snaps on offense, but he graded out as one of the highest Nebraska wide receivers versus UTEP, and I know that his workload is only going to increase, especially this week versus Colorado. So very impressed with Ja'Cory Barney. He is my first riser for Nebraska. He's in for a big year. Let's keep it with the wide receiver core, but then let's go to my fallers, guys who I'm a little bit less on after their first game. And this is Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman. I want to group those two together just because they're two similar players. And one thing that I go back to, something that I'll tell you a lot about a player, is how many snaps they get. And we barely saw these guys on the field. Jalen Lloyd was not in the ball game as much as I thought he would be. He was only in for 14 snaps, did not catch the ball once. I don't think he had a single target either. So again, really interesting game from Jalen Lloyd. I really thought he would get in the ball game more, make his presence felt. He was my pick to be the offensive MVP, and really, we just didn't see him get involved. Hopefully, Matt Rhule makes a concerted effort to get him the football during Colorado, because he has a unique ability to bring a ball to the house, just like Ja'Cory Barney. And then Malachi Coleman. Yes, Malachi is battling injury, but now Nebraska has to report all of their injuries before the game, whether a player's questionable, doubtful, whether they're going to play or not. And Malachi Coleman was 100%. He got 0 snaps versus UTEP. Some walk-ons got snaps. Again, that's concerning. And it's not just an injury thing. I'm not going to speculate on what that is, but Malachi Coleman's so athletically gifted. I find it hard to believe Matt Rhule would not get him snaps if something else wasn't going on there. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to speculate about it, but that's a little concerning, and I wanted to see him get some opportunities. So Jalen Lloyd, Malachi Coleman are my followers. And before we get any comments, again, I'm not dogging on any of these guys. I'm rooting for them. Again, we try to bring these followers to a positive spin. And at the end of the day, these guys are paid athletes nowadays. I mean, these guys are getting paid just as much as a lot of these NFL players are. So, I mean, we can be not necessarily critical, but we can say, okay, this guy's playing good and this guy's playing bad, and that's fine. So those are my followers. Let's go back to a riser. On the offensive line, Bryce Benhard had a really good game versus Colorado. Or versus UTEP, excuse me. Hopefully he has a good game versus Colorado. Now, initially, I was low on Bryce Benhard because he gave up a pressure very early on in the game. He also had a false start. But when I rewatched it for the second time, He was perfect besides those 2 snaps. He was great in the running game. A lot of those big holes were caused by Bryce Benhart. He had the highest grade in the running game of any of our offensive linemen, and he was also pretty good in the pass pro. For that reason, Pro Football Focus had him as one of the best offensive linemen, not only for Nebraska, but in the Big Ten from week 1. So was really impressed with Bryce Benhart. Again, hopefully he's a staple on that O-line. He was very good for Nebraska. Let's go back to my fallers. Tristan Alvano is up next, and I want to have a real conversation about Alvano and his performance. So he had 1 field goal. It was basically a chip shot, went right in as you would expect. But a lot of people say, Wilson, you can't be critical about Tristan Alvano because he's injured. He has a little bit of a groin injury, and hopefully that clears up. To that concern, I would say groin injuries do not go away. They're lingering. He's been dealing with this for a while. There is a very real possibility that Tristan Alvano has a groin injury throughout the entire season, because that's how those injuries operate, especially with kickers. So the fact that Matt Rhule does not trust him for more than 35 yards out is incredibly concerning. And he doesn't trust John Hull either. So again, the special team, specifically the kickers, is a huge concern for Nebraska. Tristan Alvano is a faller just because I thought that Matt Rhule trusts him a little bit more, but there were times where Nebraska was driving and they were at, let's say, the 30-yard line. It was a 3rd down, and usually on those 3rd downs, the kicker starts to warm up. Alvano was never warming up because it was never even a possibility he would go out there and kick. Matt Rhule doesn't trust his kicker situation. He's been very adamant about that. He hasn't tried to hide it. Tristan Alvano is a big faller, and hopefully he gets healthy. But again, a groin injury lingers. This isn't like a day-to-day thing where he'll get back to 100% within a week or 2. Like, no, this will probably stick around because that's how that injury works. So he is my faller, but let's go back to the risers again. We're going back and forth. My 3rd riser is the entire starting linebacker core because they all played very good. Mekhi Gabeir, my goodness, did he have a good performance versus UTEP. He was just flying around, had 5 tackles and 1.5 TFLs, was the 3rd highest graded player in that linebacker core for Nebraska. I believe it was 80 plus or something, which is a very good grade on Pro Football Focus. So really good performance from him. Prince Walt Emmanuel was our 2nd best rated linebacker from the UTEP game. Had only 12 snaps, but in those 12 snaps had 2 tackles and a TFL. He was disruptive. Again, you saw his athletic nature, so really want him to get more snaps as the year progresses. And the highest graded linebacker on the team / the highest graded starter on the team, MJ Sherman. Now, the stats really don't reflect his performance. He only had officially 2 tackles, but he got a lot of pressures, not only in the pass rush, but he was getting to the running back a couple of times, and because of that, a lot of other guys picked up on those tackles. So, man, MJ Sherman was awesome. That's what we needed to see in his week 1 performance. Let's go back to my last faller, and this is just a couple. I lumped them all together, and this were a couple true freshmen. So, Vincent Shavers, Willis McGahee, and David Hofkin are my fallers here. Now, listen, you saw the athleticism. You saw why they were thought of so much during fall camp. There's some things that just didn't click. And that's expected from a true freshman. Like, I'm not going to be too harsh on these guys. That was their first ever collegiate game. But like Vincent Shavers, there were times where he would miss out on his assignment, right? Willis McGahee, again, you saw that athletic nature from his dad, but there were times where he would, miss a read, he'd miss a tackle. So listen, again, I feel good about their future. I'm not dogging on them a little bit, but they graded out as some of the worst Nebraska defensive players from week 1. So I thought I'd mention it, but again, I'm not being negative there. Like, these guys will be fine, and I love that they're getting reps because they're going to work through it. So again, wanted to mention them. And let's go to my last riser from Nebraska's week 1 game. And this is probably the biggest one by stock. Rahmir Stewart. Now, this guy plays safety for Nebraska in the 2 deep. He was a complete stud. Out of every single player in Nebraska's football team, Rahmir Stewart graded out the highest versus UTEP. He had a 90 pass coverage grade according to Pro Football Focus. If you're not familiar with that, that is unbelievable. That's one of the best in the country. So Rahmir Stewart was really good. Of course, he had that 1 interception. He can do it all, and he's good in the pass coverage. He's good tackling. And honestly, would not be surprised if he gets on the field more and more as the year progresses, but he was a complete stud. He dominated. especially in that second half. So, all right, guys, that is my risers and fallers from Nebraska's week 1 performance. Let me know down below, who are some of the guys that impressed you versus UTEP, maybe guys who didn't impress you? Let me know in the comment section. And hey, if you made this far in the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule. Let's beat Colorado on Saturday, please. I'm hoping for it. See you guys.